So I've been wanting to make this video for a while now where I just go through and talk about my favorite book covers of all time. There was such a long list and I feel like I could go on and on about so many of them. I really just had to cut a lot of them out of this list, some of which are already in my What Makes a Great Book Cover video, which you can find in the annotations above. There may be a couple duplicates from that video, but I figured that if I was going to make my definitive list as of 2023, then I needed to get those ones in here as well. So this will be a pretty simple video, nothing too flashy, just hanging out with you and showing you guys some of my favorite book covers and why I like them. In my opinion, Self Pub has absolutely been crushing it with the book covers lately because they have pretty much no restraints on what they can and can't do. They have the final word on what their books look like in the end, which I think traditional publishers could really take a note from oftentimes. TradPub just kind of puts out these lackluster and basic covers like we explored in that other video. And I think that if you give authors the chance to kind of have a say in what their cover looks like, oftentimes it'll be more appealing to the reader. However, that doesn't mean that all trad published books have bad covers, not at all. So I've kind of divided this list into self-pub and trad-pub, and we'll be starting with my favorite self-published covers, and I think I have 4 of them here. All right, so we're gonna start with the Threadlight trilogy by Zach Argyle. And yes, I do mean the whole trilogy. I think all of these are really fantastic. I'm not opposed to, using a series or a trilogy as one of my favorites, as long as it's not like a 17 book series or something and I have to put up like a million book covers behind me. But yeah, the Threadlight trilogy. This trilogy has really incredible artwork done by, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Omer Barak Onal. He's kind of a staple in the self-pub community as far as his cover designs and artwork and whatnot. He's done art for a book that I'll bring up here in a little bit, and I think he also did the work for Paladin Unbound by Jeff Spite. But yeah, I love seeing the characters front and center. It gives me a really good image to place in my head canon for them, and they just look so cool. I love the icy blue colors mixed with the pops of green, and especially the first book really has you asking questions like, who are these people? What kind of magic is being used? You can see it on display in that first cover there. Where are they going and why do they have a baby with them? And I know that besides Zach Argyle just being an awesome guy and a great writer, these covers definitely were a major factor in me picking up the books. And then we're gonna move on to We Men of Ash and Shadow by H.L. Tinsley, aka Holly Tinsley. We Men of Ash and Shadow is one of my favorite books of all time, and I know I've talked about this book on the channel a lot, but this book really is deserving of all of the praise it gets, not only from the content inside the pages, but also this amazing cover art by Luke Michael Copsey. The overall gray tone of the cover with little splashes of color kind of set the emotional tone for the story, and having the main protagonist down at the bottom corner looking up at this massive city around him really makes the city feel like it's a character in itself, which I think it very much is. It's just a perfect example of looking at a cover and instantly getting a feel for what you can expect from the story. The sequel's cover is pretty good too, I like it, but I've always had a special place in my heart for the debut cover that you can see here, or here, wherever I put it. And then from the works of Thomas Howard Riley, we have We Break Immortals and The Monsters We Feed. I think both of these are really awesome works done by Omer Barak Onal for We Break Immortals, who also did Argyle's Threadlight covers I mentioned earlier, and J. Caleb Designs for The Monsters We Feed. Both of them intrigue the reader and make them ask questions, and also something that I think is cool is the characters are always facing away from the camera, leaving it up to the reader to decide how they look in their head, while also giving them a kind of archetype that you can kind of mentally work from and make up your own image. The colors kind of pop and look really cinematic. It looks like a big production, which is exactly what the content inside feels like. And mostly, they just look very cool. Like Brandon Sanderson says, when in doubt, err on the side of awesome. And then we have King's Dark Tidings by Kel Cade. This is one of my top 3 favorite series of all time. I'm not going to go on a long tangent about how much I love the series. You guys already know all that. But I cannot deny the awesomeness of the covers absolutely correlates with the content inside it. The first cover is my favorite, with Rezkin kind of walking alone in a foggy city. Is very dramatic. And coming in second to that would actually be the second book, Reign of Madness, my favorite in the series, where you see Rezkin in his Dark Tidings outfit looking out over the arena. Chris McGrath did an incredible job with these covers, and I think him and Kel Cade are just a match made in heaven for this series. It really, really, really works. Also, shout out to her prequel novella, Mage of No Renown. When this cover reveal dropped, I just about lost my mind. This cover is so cool, and while Wesson does look a little older in the cover than I had kind of envisioned, it's still so badass and is pulled directly from a really, really awesome scene in the book, which is always a major plus. So then going to the trad pub side of things, we have Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon. I've been meaning to go back to this book, and yes, not everything on this list is something that I have read to completion. This is one that I started, and it was a little too slow for me at the time, but I do want to go back and give it a second chance. But I absolutely love this cover, with the fire and ice and the fist being center stage, surrounded by black everywhere, and the color pop of the red and the blue. It just works really, really well. And I'm sure this book sold a lot, not only because of the content written by the wonderful Clay Harmon, but also there were probably many who bought it solely based on the cover artwork by Larry Rostand. I know I was one of them for sure. So then, more of a recent-ish favorite, we have Fairy Tale by Stephen King. This is one where I never read this book at all. I never even picked it up. I heard a lot of mixed reviews on it, so I never bought it. But from the moment that this cover was released, I was obsessed with the art. I think it looks so cool. Depending on how you look at it, it could look like an evil eye that's larger than life next to these characters, or maybe a stairway down to madness or darkness. Just really, really loved the vibes that this cover was giving off. And Gabriel Rodriguez is the illustrator for this one, and also he did the Lock and Key series by Joe Hill, from what I understand. And then we have Locklands by Robert Jackson Bennett. I notoriously did not enjoy this book, aside from the banger that was the epilogue. I think that it was just a really poor conclusion to the trilogy, again, aside from the epilogue, because that was great. But man, this cover is so cool. I really enjoyed the style of the whole trilogy's covers, and they look fantastic together on a shelf. The cover art is by Will Staley, which was surprisingly difficult information to find, and I don't have my copy here with me, so I wasn't able to just look in the book. For some reason, that's just not really posted anywhere, and I think, you know, people need to give more shout outs to their cover illustrators, because they're doing a lot of the selling for you. And then we have Battleground, the newest book in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. I've been waiting for a straight-on shot of Dresden doing something awesome for a long time. In this case, walking through a war-torn city with just things exploding. They've always been kind of a side profile or something where the cover, while it looks great, didn't really tell us a whole lot about what the book is, but Chris McGrath does an awesome job with these covers, and I've loved damn near every single one of them. And then we have Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and this time I'm talking about the UK cover, because we all know that usually the UK covers are way better than the American ones. Sam Weber makes an incredible cover art for this book that is much more indicative of what the book is about than whatever the hell the American version is, or that weird 10th anniversary edition. The cover of this doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what the book is about, but at least Quoth is on the cover and you can tell that it's him, and there's some kind of earthy tones to it. I think it goes more along with kind of the vibe of the series more so than the other ones. The US cover is just awful. That's a cover that I constantly give shit to, because it's just like, what is this? When I first picked up the US cover, I was like, okay, so it's about a mage, like a druid or something, because he's in the woods and he's got this long, flowy robe and stuff. And it's like, nope, that's not really what it was. I mean, he kind of is a mage, but it's not the same thing. Lastly, and this is a bit of a curveball, I think, but I'm going to bring up The Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. This is a series that I loved as a younger person. I think I started reading it when I was probably 12 or 13, and then kept reading until it was finished, and I absolutely fell in love with it. But this isn't a review for the series. The cover artwork, I think, is fantastic. There's this really awesome border around every single book. They all have like a slightly different color on like the binding, and the pictures were always a scene from the book, and they were very stylized, and it was always really fun to see what the next picture in the next book would be, and kind of where it would pop up in the story. And so that was always kind of a fun adventure. Whenever the next book would come out, it's like, oh, what's the image on this one, what's the scene on this one. So that was always really cool as a teenager or whatever I was when I was reading him. Brett L. Hellquist is an absolute legend for his iconic artwork for this series, not only for the covers, but if I remember, he had artwork inside as well. And it was very reminiscent of the style of, like, something like Tim Burton, something that's very stylized that we kind of saw a lot more after these books came out. And I have to believe that there were many authors and artists and other creatives that were very inspired from this type of artwork. All right, so that is the end of my list here, and something I think is kind of funny. We were always told growing up, don't judge a book by its cover, and while that still remains mostly true, especially the spirit of the phrase, that was also during a time when book covers were kinda shit, honestly. Nowadays, in order to make it in the modern publishing world, you have to have a snappy cover, and you can actually tell how much work someone put into their book's contents by how much work they put into what's on the outside as well. It shows they care about gathering new readers, and that they believe that what they've written will sell well when they put the money into good cover design. Anyways, that's going to wrap us up here. Liking and subscribing, as always, helps us out a lot. And we also have our Patreon page where you can support us if you'd like to do so. We just uploaded our first piece of Patreon exclusive content over there, and it was a really, really good time. We had so much fun recording it, and it was a blast for me to go back and edit it and relive some of those conversations. So definitely check that out if you're interested. You can get it at any tier starting at $3 a month. You can also reach out to us on Twitter or Discord, which are both linked in the description of this video, as well as our Patreon page if you'd like to check that out. Thanks so much for watching. Have a fun and safe 4th of July. And until next time, I'll be judging you by your book cover. Yep, that's the outro. He's also done artwork for another book that I'll bring up here in a little bit, but then... Fuck. Yeah. And a big shout out to our first Night Angel tier patron, Shad Zaman. Thank you so much, man.